UFC Fight Night Dariush versus Tsarukyan is this weekend. I'm going to give you a full card prediction breakdown of all 13 fights on this card, starting with the great match of Jamey-Lyn Horth versus Veronica Hardy. I really don't care about this matchup at all. I'm going to be completely honest. This is one of the fights that I will skip. Obviously, Veronica Hardy, the wife of Dan Hardy. I'm going to go with her in this one. Juliana Miller, she won the Ultimate Fighter, so I guess that means something, but she honestly isn't that great of a fighter. Veronica Hardy did not look great in that last fight. She kind of just stayed out of bad positions on the ground and did enough damage to win the fight. So I know she is pretty solid on the feet. She is 28 years of age. She hasn't been the most active fighter. Like, she was out for, 4 years? I guess it's more 3 years because that fight was really 8 months ago. Wow, time kind of flies by. But yeah, she was out for 3 years, came back 8 months ago, is fighting again, still pretty young. Jamey-Lyn Horth, I know she's looked decent. I think a win over Haley Cohen isn't necessarily bad, even though Haley Cohen is pretty much like a raw prospect. She has like all these traits, but doesn't have the actual MMA background yet. So I'm going to have to go with Veronica Hardy. I'm not going to live and die on this sword. Pick whoever you want. I'm going to be completely honest. Honestly, you'll probably do better with the coin flip at this point. I don't have a solid prediction here. I'll just side with Veronica Hardy. I think she's pretty decent on the feet. She can stay out of trouble on the ground. With the card, we have Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. I'm going to go with Wellington Turman. I believe Jared Gooden, his last fight against Carlston Harris, he did come in on short notice. He didn't look too great. I mean, I guess he did make it kind of competitive, but Carlston Harris, this fighting style is just very... it's a little bit nerve-wracking when you pick him in a fight. So I was really nervous during that fight, but he ended up getting the win. But Jared Gooden coming in on this fight against Wellington Turman. Not a bad matchup for Jared Gooden, but I will say Wellington Turman is definitely improving, even though he has come off of 2 losses, to Randy Brown and to Andre Petrosky. His last fight against Randy Brown, he didn't look too bad. You can see that the training with Pereira is starting to be a little bit more noticeable. The way he throws his leg kicks is like it's not necessarily how he throws his leg kicks. Pereira has a certain stance that he has where his hips are like super straight, and that's why his leg kicks land so well, is because he's able to hide it really well with his stance. And Wellington Turman kind of adopted that a little bit more, and you saw the leg kicks kind of become a factor in that Randy Brown fight. But Randy Brown, a pretty decent fighter in general, top 15, if not right outside the top 15 of that division. So Wellington Turman, I think he can get this one done against Jared Gooden. Jared Gooden likes to throw hooks, and I think Wellington Turman can kind of just stay back a little bit more, leg kick, and maybe throw some stuff down the pipe, use his jab a little bit more. So I think Wellington Turman can hang in this one. He did beat Miesha Cirkunov by armbar and Sam Alvey by split decision. I guess we don't want to look at that Sam Alvey fight, but he will be at a 5-inch reach disadvantage, which is kind of rough to see here, but I do think he ends up getting the win. He is improving quite a bit as well. So I'm going to have to go with Wellington Turman, probably by decision. 72% picked by Tapology. I agree there. Majority by decision. Up the card, we have Ihor Poteria versus Rodolfo Bellato. I am going to go with Rodolfo Bellato. The poor guy's only losses ever in his career have been to Vitor Petrino, who I believe is top 15 now. I might be wrong there. He's got to be like borderline at this point because he has quite a bit of unranked wins at this point in the UFC. Yeah, he beat Rodolfo Bellato in Contender Series, 3 unranked wins against Turkali, Prashnio, and Bukowskis. So maybe he probably isn't ranked, but he's probably going to be fighting a pretty highly unranked guy, highly rated unranked guy is how I'll put it soon. So, but Vitor Petrino has looked pretty good, a pretty good prospect in his own right, and the fact Bellato has been the only guy, or at least Vitor Petrino has been the only guy that Bellato cannot beat, isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is kind of weird in general that it is his only 2 losses, but he is coming off a fight on the Contender Series against Murtaza Talha, where he won by KO. Before then, won a pretty boring decision against Acacio dos Santos. You never really see that out of Bellato. He doesn't really have boring fights, but he's starting to develop his stand-up a little bit more. He's really good on the ground as well. I don't see a way where Ihor Poteria can win this one. He's relatively tough. He did lose to Carlos Olberg by KO. The Nikolai Ngumuranu, I always mess up that name. He looked pretty tough in that fight, but ended up losing that one by TKO, just took too much damage. And got caught, I think, from what I remember, he got caught a little bit early on against Shogun, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? But ended up getting the finish anyways, but I don't think his toughness is going to help him here. Maybe it is going to be a little bit more of a competitive fight than Olberg, because Olberg's a really good prospect, and Gumuranu is a pretty good fighter as well. So I think Bellato can hang in there if it goes to the ground, which I don't think it will. Maybe Bellato does shoot for takedowns. I trust Bellato to win there. He has really good jiu-jitsu. If it's on the feet, I think Bellato at this point on the feet will do very well as well in this fight. So minus 455 favorite here. Will be at a 2.5-inch reach advantage as well. Same age at 27 years of age. Bellato by KO is what Tapology is picking. I think that's probably about correct. I don't see this one going to the ground, so I don't think he's going to have to use his submission skills, but I do think he gets the finish over Ihor Poteria just with the amount of shots he's going to land on him. I think the refs are just going to call it off. Ihor Poteria probably won't defend himself at that point. So I'm going to go Rodolfo Bellato by KO, I will say, in the first round. Up the card, we have Steve Garcia versus Melquizael Costa. I'm going to go with Costa in this matchup. He has looked pretty tough in his last couple fights. I believe he made his debut. I'm sorry. Yeah, wait, no, he didn't make his debut against Thiago Moises. I think it was on the Brazil card the beginning of last year. So what was it, the January card or something like that? He made his debut there. Made it really tough on Thiago Moises on the ground. Ended up getting submitted, but again, made it pretty tough on the ground. Held his own on the feet as well. Of course, Thiago Moises is not that great on the feet, but he's able to hang in there. Looked good on the ground, so it was enough for me to see that. Looks super strong as well. Beat Austin Lingo by a decision, which is kind of iffy. I mean, you really shouldn't be bringing a guy like Austin Lingo to a decision. He isn't the best fighter, but he isn't the worst. Austin Lingo, but I think if you're a pretty good prospect, you should probably be finishing a guy like Lingo. But Steve Garcia, last fight was a win over Shailan Nordembike, where he kind of just got dropped and then ended up getting the finish after Nordembike tired out a little bit more. So Nordembike is a really good prospect, and I thought he was going to beat Steve Garcia, and I was surprised at the point where Steve Garcia actually beat him. But 31 years of age for Garcia, 27 years of age for Costa. I'm going to go with Costa. He's super strong. I can see him looking for takedowns, and if not, I think he can use some of his rangy style to land some body kicks. And I think Steve Garcia isn't the most durable guy either, so maybe Costa can catch him in the second or third round. But I think I might just go with a decision here. I don't see Costa finishing him. He's, again, a very strong dude, so maybe he will look for a couple of takedowns, but I do think he can land pretty well on Garcia in this matchup and make it, I don't want to say competitive, but it could. Steve Garcia can definitely take a round here, so maybe 29-28, but I can see 30-27 decision for Melquizael Costa. Tapology agrees, 70% picked by Tapology, 65% by decision. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Joe Solecki versus Drakkar Klose. I'm going to go with Drakkar Klose. He hasn't fought in a while. I think his last fight was a year and 3 months ago against Rafa Garcia. But Joe Solecki's a grappler. Isn't the best on the feet. Drakkar Klose, good takedown defense, good on the feet as well. He's not bad anywhere. He's pretty much okay everywhere. I say a similar thing to Marvin Vettori. He's okay everywhere. Nothing really jumps off the page other than his chin, because he just takes a beating sometimes and he's able to just not get hurt. So, but that's Vettori, of course. But Drakkar Klose is pretty solid at everything. He's not really bad at anything. So I think he can do really well against Joe Solecki. I don't think Joe Solecki is that great of a fighter. Beat Carl Deaton the third by submission in his last fight about 8 months ago. Beat Alex da Silva by majority decision about a year and a half ago. So he lost a split decision to Jared Gordon, which at this point maybe isn't that bad, but it was 2 years ago. So I don't even know at this point. Jared Gordon has had some interesting performances recently. So I don't know how to grade that one, but I think just matching up the styles, I think Drakkar Klose can do really good work on Joe Solecki and possibly get the finish. Maybe just a decision, because honestly, Drakkar Klose, another year and a half off. Before then, he fought 3 months between these fights, but before then, I think he got injured or whatever, some spinal injury after the Beneil Dariush fight. Can't remember who was he fighting. I think someone pushed him, and then it was it was Jeremy Stevens that pushed him, and he got injured, and he was out for a little bit after that. So he's taken a lot of time off in his career, especially recently. So we don't know what Drakkar Klose will look like. He's 35 years of age, so it's not that bad of an age gap at that point. 35, you're still kind of decent in your prime, and I just think he has the skills to beat Joe Solecki. So I'm going to go Drakkar Klose by a 30-27 decision. I think he really puts a beating on Joe Solecki in this matchup. Up the card, we have Cody Brundage versus Zach Reese. I believe Zach Reese was on the Contender Series this year, beat Eli Aronov, which I think I picked Aronov in this one. Reese was kind of an interesting prospect because he would have these weird moments in fights where he seems like he's bound to get KO'd or bound to get beaten, and then he just kind of comes back and wins the fight, like the Eli Aronov fight. I don't know if he got knocked down or if he just went off balance or if he got caught and he slipped or whatever, and just the power of Aronov took him down. But Aronov pretty much dropped him on the ground and went to finish him up there, but then got caught in an armbar. So he's getting these first round finishes, has looked decently impressive. Like, I think he does need to grow a little bit more as a prospect and develop some more of his skills. Like, he has really good finishing ability, and I think that's good enough to get you through some of these bottom parts of this divisions, especially in the UFC. So I do think he's going to beat Cody Brundage, and Cody Brundage hasn't looked. Cody Brundage is one of those weirder fighters. Like, he'll beat a Jacob Malcolm. Well, it's an illegal elbow, but he has his performance against Cedric Dumas, which I think I picked Cody Brundage. If I may be mistaken there, I might have not actually. I think I picked Dumas there, but I think his previous fight I didn't pick him, so I'm a little bit wrong there. But Cody Brundage lost to Rodolfo Vieira, Mikhail Osachek, and then beat Tresean Gore. So he's had a couple weird performances. Like, there's certain points where I'm like, okay, this guy's pretty decent, I'm going to pick him. And then there's other points where it's like, what the hell was I thinking? But Zach Reese, I think with his finishing ability, can beat a guy like Cody Brundage, who isn't the most talented guy in that division. And I think he can get this one done by finish in the first round. We'll have a 5-inch reach advantage as well. I can see Cody Brundage kind of catching him, and maybe Zach Reese getting back up to his feet and landing some really good shots on Brundage, or maybe getting him into a submission. Honestly, I can see him getting knocked down, Brundage hopping on top, and then just running into a submission, honestly, kind of similarly to his last fight against Aronov. So I am to go with Zach Reese in this one. I don't think he's a crazy prospect. Maybe if he can develop a little bit more. I mean the skills are there. He's hittable, and I think he's just kind of waiting to get finished by one of these higher ranked guys. So against Cody Brundage, I'm going to take Zach Reese, especially with the finishing ability. He hasn't made it out of the first round in any of his fights. Only 6-0 as well, so he's not too experienced at all. It is a middleweight, so you never really know, but I'm going to go with Zach Reese in this one by finish. I'm thinking submission. I can see Brundage kind of just running into a submission after he drops or hurts Zach Reese or something like that. Maybe even a guillotine. I don't know. I think Zach Reese ends up getting the finish in the first round. I think that's all that's kind of important there. I don't see Brundage finishing Reese. I mean, he does have a pretty solid possibility of finishing Reese because Reese is definitely there to get finished, but I'm going to go with Reese in this one by finish in the first round. Either KO or submission. I don't want to say it's 50-50, but I don't think I can really decide which one he'll probably win by. We haven't seen too much of him as a prospect against some of the higher level competition, at least compared to what he has been fighting. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Miesha Tate versus Julia Avila. I am going to go with Miesha Tate here. I saw Julia Avila's last fight, and how long ago was that one exactly? It was, 2.5 years ago against Julia Stoliarenko, who's not that great of a fighter. She did win by rear naked choke, so I guess that's decently impressive, but she's 35 years of age. I know Miesha Tate's 37, but she's a former champion, so I guess that kind of doesn't mean something, but beat Marion Renaud. I know I'm just completely butchering some of these names. But then had a pretty decent performance against Ketlin Vieira, where it was actually a pretty close decision, but lost that one. Before then, lost to Lauren Murphy, where she kind of just got dominated. Really weird fight. I thought for sure she was going to beat Lauren Murphy, but she ended up losing, took a 1.5 years off, which was pretty interesting there as well. And now she's fighting Julia Avila, who hasn't fought in a very long time either. So her last fight against Julia Stoliarenko, she was very messy on the feet. But I think Miesha Tate, who's decent on the ground, decent on the feet, I think she can land some really good shots on Julia Avila, get the decision. I don't think she gets the finish, but I'm going to take Miesha Tate here. I could be very wrong, and Miesha Tate's not where I think she is in her career, but I'm going to go with Miesha Tate by decision. Maybe 29-28. Maybe Julia Avila lands some really good shots on her, but she just looks really sloppy on the feet, and I think Miesha Tate can land some good shots and at least take the decision here. Up the card, we have Clay Guida versus Joaquim Silva. I am going to go with Joaquim Silva here. He has some really good power in his hands. He had a pretty, I guess, how will I say this? He had a couple decent moments in that Arman Tsarukyan fight. I think Arman Tsarukyan probably clearly won that one, but Joaquim Silva was able to wobble Arman Tsarukyan pretty badly, although he did get pretty much out-wrestled and grappled on the ground, which is kind of interesting to see here against a guy in Clay Guida who might try to wrestle him in this fight. But again, very strong, very powerful. You definitely saw the strength in Silva's, like just how strong he is against a guy in Arman Tsarukyan who's a very good grappler himself. So you saw some of the strength there, some of the power in his hands. I think he does really good against an older Clay Guida, who I don't think is all that there in his career. Like, let's be real, 34 years of age, Joaquim Silva versus 42-year-old Clay Guida. 1 inch reach disadvantage, I guess, but I think the way Clay Guida fights, where he's very hittable, tries to fight at a high pace, maybe eventually he'll be able to tire out Joaquim Silva a little bit more if he does try to spam some of those takedowns. But I think Joaquim Silva can definitely KO Clay Guida in this fight in like the second or third round. So I'm going to go Joaquim Silva by finish in the third round. I think he ends up catching Clay Guida. I think it'd just be a little bit too much for him. Late second, early third, I'll say. I think the power will just be a little bit too much. I don't think Clay Guida is going to be able to get some of the takedowns. It's going to be more of a slower fight. I think Clay Guida is probably going to be circling around a little bit more. Joaquim Silva is going to be following him a little bit, looking to land some shots. Clay Guida is going to be looking to attempt some takedowns. Not going to be able to get it. And Joaquim Silva is going to be able to counter. So I'm going to go Joaquim Silva by finish in the second or third round. Of the card, we have Punahele Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I mean, come on now. I'm going to go with Punahele Soriano, probably by KO in the first round. Tough dude, good power in his hands. Dustin Stoltzfus is not that great of a fighter. I mean, even just, if you want to know my take on Stoltzfus, it's pretty much what Strickland says about Stoltzfus. So he's not that great of a fighter. He kind of got into the UFC based on what Joe Pyfer injuring his arm. So there's that. His last fight got finished, I think it was 17 seconds or something like that by Albus Magomedov, front kick to the face, and then just finished immediately for them beat Dwight Grant, which is an all right win. 32 years of age for Dustin Stoltzfus. I believe he will have a 2.5 inch reach advantage over Punahele, but Punahele, again, is very tough. Trains at a really good gym at Extreme Couture. Good power in his hands. I think he just catches Stoltzfus and KOs him, honestly. Stoltzfus might look for some takedowns. I don't think he'll get it on Soriano again, especially early on in this fight. I'm going Soriano by KO first round. I think it's pretty self-explanatory there. I think a lot of people would probably agree with that one. So let's move on. Cardio Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum in this fight. Sean Brady, I like Sean Brady, but man, I think this is going to be a very tough matchup for him. I know it's been a while since he's fought, hasn't it? It's been well over a year, hasn't it? It's been, 1 year ago since he lost by KO against Belal Muhammad, his first career loss. I guess he said that it was like a big weight lifted off his shoulders. He saw like a sports psychiatrist or therapist or whatever they call him. And he said that helped quite a bit. So I guess we'll kind of see what that looks like in this fight. But honestly, when it comes to facing tough situations, I am going to go with Kelvin Gastelum in this fight. I feel like if Sean Brady does get caught by Kelvin Gastelum, which is definitely a possibility because Kelvin Gastelum's pretty tough, decent takedown defense, really good striking, again, just has a lot of heart in there. If he's going to be able to land on Sean Brady, it just feels like Kelvin Gastelum and Sean Brady are just kind of complete opposites. I don't want to bag on Sean Brady too much here, but because I do like him, I think he's pretty good fighter, a good grappler as well. He's a couple one-arm guillotines, which is absolutely insane. But I think when Gastelum hurts him, I kind of want to just see where Sean Brady's at, because that fight against Belal Muhammad, like he got caught by Belal Muhammad, but it just seemed like he kind of like all the spirit kind of just left his body. It was just a really weird finish in all actuality there. So I mean, it's just kind of rough to see. I know Belal Muhammad's good, but on the feet, that's not something you want to see at all. So maybe he's going to be able to land some good takedowns on Kelvin Gastelum, control him on the ground, get him in some good spots in the grappling, and maybe even win a decision there. But even in that Chiesa fight where he's able to completely dominate him, I think even in that second or third round, he ended up getting caught and almost finished. So it is kind of worrying for Sean Brady in this fight. So I am just going to have to go with Kelvin Gastelum. I think he's going to be tougher. He's going to have the power in his hands to land on Sean Brady and hurt him pretty badly. He's going to be strong. He's cutting down from middleweight. Well, his previous weight class was middleweight. I know he's a little bit chunkier, so it will look a little bit better at welterweight. But I don't know. I don't like this for Sean Brady. Sean Brady will have a 1-inch reach advantage in this matchup. I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum by, I don't want to say KO, but maybe like second round TKO or something like that. Like he catches Sean Brady, finishes him up on the feet. I don't think Sean Brady goes out or anything like that. It is Kelvin Gastelum. The power still isn't that crazy at welterweight. I think he did drop Chris Curtis. No, that was at, yeah, Chris Curtis is a middleweight. How long ago was this? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Chris Curtis was his last fight. Am I remembering something wrong? I thought he had moved down to welterweight recently. Oh, no. I'm thinking of his fight with Shab. Okay, so we haven't seen him at welterweight recently because I remember this fight, his return fight. I remember he did have a fight at welterweight. It was against Shavkat, but that one ended up not going through. So we'll see what he looks like at welterweight. We haven't seen it yet, so I guess that's something to keep an eye on. But I think he's just going to be able to land pretty cleanly on Brady. And I don't know how much heart Brady has in that octagon to kind of endure some of the damage there and pull through a win there for himself. So I'm going to go with Gastelum. I believe the lines have it favored for Sean Brady in this fight, which he can definitely win for sure. So we'll see how this one goes, but I'm going to go with Gastelum by standing TKO in the second or third round. Up the card, we have Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. I'm going to go with Rob Font. Here's the thing with Deiveson Figueiredo. He's a very physical guy, and you notice that a lot at flyweight, and it was a lot to do with his weight cut. But at bantamweight, I don't think he's going to be able to have that same physicality. Like I saw the pictures online, he does look great. But again, I just think he was cutting a lot of weight at flyweight. Very big dude. Used, again, a lot of his physicality to get guys to the ground, land with power. I don't think that's going to be the case here. He's a lot smaller guy. Obviously, weight-wise, he's still relatively heavy. But, I mean, in height, he's 5'5" compared to, 5'8" from Rob Font. This is going to be at... It should be at 135 because Rob Font took his last fight at catchweight, so it's kind of messing with my brain. Yeah, 135. I think Rob Font's going to be able to piece him up on the feet. I don't think Deiveson Figueiredo is going to be able to get him to the ground. I don't think he's going to be able to do too much to him on the feet either. I just think Rob Font is really good on the feet. You saw what he did to Yanez, just completely beat him up pretty badly. I know Yanez up the card, we had Jamey-Lyn Turner versus Bobby Green. I believe Jamey-Lyn Turner is taking this fight on short notice. I am going to go with Jamey-Lyn Turner. Very fast on the feet. I am kind of surprised he was able to make this weight on short notice. I guess the weigh-ins haven't necessarily happened yet, but 155 on short notice. I always thought that Jamey-Lyn Turner would cut quite a bit of weight. I know he says he doesn't, as he says, like the way he's built or whatever, he's able to cut weight relatively easily, or he at least looks bigger than he actually is. So we'll see if he makes weight. I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But I'm actually kind of surprised he made this one on short notice. I think he's just going to be a little bit faster than Bobby Green. Bobby Green, I think, did get knocked down against Tony Ferguson in his last fight, coming off of two of the rougher performances of his career. I'm not talking outside of the Grant Dawson fight because he did KO him. But Jared Gordon, he did not look good at all. I felt like he was missing a lot of his strike, and it didn't really look like Bobby Green. It didn't look super technical. It just looked really sloppy. And then Tony Ferguson landed on a Bobby Green in the first round and knocked him down. So, I mean, there is points where Bobby Green is getting caught. He is 37 years of age. Jamey-Lyn Turner's 28, so what is that, a 9-year age gap? I'm going to take Jamey-Lyn Turner in this fight. He's got the length on him, 4.5 inches of reach here. I think the speed might be a little bit of the same here, but I think the pop and the shot Jamey-Lyn Turner is going to be able to land on Bobby Green. It's going to be a little bit different here. And you saw the way Jamey-Lyn Turner was able to take damage from Dan Hooker. I think you can do the same against Bobby Green and land a little bit better on him. So I'm going to go with Jamey-Lyn Turner by a decision. I don't think he finishes Bobby Green, but I do think he gets the decision. People are saying submission for Jamey-Lyn Turner. I think that's pretty interesting. 35% for Turner to get the KO as well. I don't mind that, but I'm not going to put everything into that. So I'm going to go Jamey-Lyn Turner by decision, 30-27, 29-28 over Bobby Green. Up the card, we have Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. I've been kind of going back and forth on this fight because I was actually really thinking of going Beneil Dariush. I think a lot of people are actually underrating him this week, in all honesty. I know that Charles Oliveira KO is pretty rough, and I did choose Charles Oliveira when a lot of people were choosing Beneil Dariush, and it feels like it's kind of flipping. on Arman Tsarukyan here, even though I do think Arman Tsarukyan is going to win this fight. I guess it's a little bit of a spoiler alert there, but it's a little bit different situation here. I think Beneil Dariush is kind of getting underrated in this fight. We did see how we saw how Beneil Dariush did against Gamrot, who's a really good wrestler, and you saw how Gamrot did against Arman Tsarukyan, so you can kind of keep those in mind. But I think Beneil Dariush is the better grappler in those submission situations, just the grapple. Like when it gets to the ground, I think after that it goes to Beneil Dariush for sure. Arman Tsarukyan is pretty tough and very strong dude, so you can't really compare their takedown abilities. I think it's pretty similar, but I think I'm just going to have to go with Arman Tsarukyan here. I know Beneil Dariush has decent striking. It's nothing to be crazy about. It's very weird striking. He's very open on the feet. He does have some good power in his hands, but it's just very sloppy. Arman Tsarukyan, although he did get caught against Joaquim Silva after kind of just going for a couple takedowns in like the first and third round and just controlling him, he did end up getting caught, ended up coming back. Joaquim Silva is not an easy guy to beat. He's very strong, very powerful, so it's still a pretty tough matchup to have in general. But Arman Tsarukyan, technical enough on the feet to where I feel kind of comfortable taking him against Beneil Dariush. I think Beneil Dariush definitely has a chance to kind of just land some really good shots on Arman Tsarukyan and steal this fight. But I think Beneil Dariush is going to have to mix in the takedowns a little bit more, get Arman Tsarukyan into a closer range to land shots on him, because Beneil Dariush kind of has that sloppy style where he kind of will just rush at you and land some good shots there. So I do think he needs to shorten the distance a little bit more. I think Arman Tsarukyan is going to be backing up, looking for some body kicks, which I do think he should be doing. But I think Beneil Dariush should offensively be looking for takedowns. If you're Arman Tsarukyan, I don't think you necessarily should. Maybe it would be nice to just mix that kind of thing in. Maybe go for the clinch a little bit more and land some like elbows in the clinch or something like that, and maybe get the points that way. But I do think if you are going to be taking down Beneil Dariush, it's going to be very hard because, again, he has all of those grappling moves, and you don't want to get caught in something like that. You saw what Gamrot was able to do against Beneil Dariush, and it wasn't much. And you saw what Gamrot was able to do against Tsarukyan, and it wasn't a crazy amount either. They both have extremely good takedown defense. So if this does become a grappling match, it's going to be super entertaining to watch because it is very high-level grappling. But I think it will stay on the feet. I think Beneil Dariush kind of just needs to check a little bit more on Arman Tsarukyan, make him believe he's going for takedowns, just keep that in his mind, close the distance and try and land some good shots. But I think Arman Tsarukyan is going to be able to keep a good distance, defend the takedowns well, and land some really good shots, especially body kicks to Beneil Dariush, and I think he'll eventually slow down. I don't know if he finishes Beneil Dariush. If he does get a finish, I think it'll probably be like the 4th or 5th round. Weirdly enough, is this Beneil Dariush's like first 5-round fight? I don't remember him ever being in a 5-round fight. If this is his first one, I think it actually is. So we'll see how he looks in 5 rounds if it does end up going there. That's actually kind of weird that Arman Tsarukyan has more 5-round fights than Beneil Dariush, and Beneil Dariush is number 3. So, but I am going to go with Arman Tsarukyan here. I think he's just going to be a little bit more technical on the feet. He's just going to outpoint Dariush. I don't think Dariush is going to be able to do enough in the grappling because I don't think he'll necessarily stay there for long. And I think the shots that he does land on the feet, if he does land them, it's going to be super sloppy and he's going to be open for counter. So Arman Tsarukyan, I'm kind of hoping he takes that next step in his skill set. I kind of want to see that a little bit more. You saw his ability to control Damir Ismagulov on the ground in that fight. I know Damir Ismagulov, at this point, how you grade him is how you grade him. I think he's a pretty high level fighter. I think a lot of guys at lightweight is pretty high level in general. So maybe he's like just out of the top 15, but with all the stuff going on with some of the wins and losses or whatever, with the Gamrots, the Garams, the Damir Ismagulov, and you had Grant Dawson beating Damir Ismagulov pretty dominantly, better than Arman Tsarukyan did. So I'm kind of looking to see what Arman Tsarukyan's skill set will look like in this fight. I think he's going to be able to do pretty well against Beneil Dariush. So I'm going to go Arman Tsarukyan. How will I say this? 4th round, maybe TKO on Dariush. Again, we don't know what he looks like in 5 rounds. So the pace that Dariush would fight at in 3 rounds against guys like Drakkar Klose, that fight was insane. Even a lot of these other fights, Mateusz Gamrot, that fight was a pretty high pace because Mateusz Gamrot just kept going forward. I know he was being defensive quite a bit there, but even Charles Oliveira's fight, again, I want to see what he looks like in that 4th round. So we don't know what that looks like from Beneil Dariush. We do see Tsarukyan kind of slow down a little bit more as well. So that's something to keep an eye on in this fight. But I think Arman Tsarukyan can land a really good shot on Beneil Dariush in the 4th round, slow him down with body kicks, and win this one by TKO. Maybe he lands a really good body shot and wins that way, but I can also see this one going to decision. I'll say decision for Tsarukyan. I'll play a little bit safe, but I think if you are looking for a finish, I think 3rd or 4th round finish with body shots, like a body kick. He does have pretty decent body kicks. Beneil Dariush isn't the most... he isn't this like a stacked built guy, so he doesn't have a lot of muscle there. So I think that's a pretty decent target for Tsarukyan. Maybe look for a lot of head kicks, kind of like what Oliveira did a little bit more. Like he's not going to spam head kicks like Oliveira did, with how defensively unaware Dariush is. So maybe he'll mix that up a little bit more and catch Dariush that way. We'll see what Dariush's durability looks like at this point at 34.5 years of age. But I'm going to go Tsarukyan by... I kind of want to go with finish now. I'm going to go 4th round finish. Tsarukyan, I can see him just working to the body and maybe landing head kick to the head. But I think I've probably said quite a bit enough now at this point. So I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan, 4th round finish. If not, I can see this one going to decision, a relatively dominant decision for Tsarukyan. So I'm going to go Arman Tsarukyan. You don't want me to pick. 4th round finish or decision. 62% picked by Tapology, 52% by decision, 35% by TKO KO. Dariush 38% picked, 69% by decision, 17% by TKO KO. I don't see him finishing Tsarukyan by KO, but maybe he wins this one by decision. Maybe it's 48-47. I can see that one kind of going either way at that point if it does go to decision with Beneil Dariush. Maybe winning some of these rounds as they go on. I kind of want to see what the grappling looks like. High-level grappling in these main events would be pretty fun. But I am going to go with Arman Tsarukyan in this one. So let me know what you guys think about this video. Who do you guys have in the main event? I'll see you guys next.